welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula One. And rants aplenty will be happening today, do not fear. So the Australian Grand Prix came to a close, and what could be said for the race? For the first 54 laps, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Great racing, great overtaking, charging through the field from the likes of Checo, and from Carlos Sainz, and from George Russell, who were on compromise strategies before the first red flag period. You know, they elected to pit, the red flag came out, they lost out, they started gaining ground again. It had a little bit of everything, and it was a really fun Australian Grand Prix. And then we had Kevin Magnussen crash, and instead of ending the race behind the safety car, or just red flagging the race and, you know, making it 75% race distance, race will not resume, we had to have the dramatic conclusion to the race, which meant that we had 2 laps and it was fucking chaos at the start, like I knew it was going to be. We had big damage, loads of cars off, and in the end, drivers and teams ended up in positions where they didn't really deserve and scored points, and teams that were on for really big points lost out majorly for a lap that then didn't count, because we went back to the lap 56 results, minus the dead cars, and we gave Carlos Sainz a penalty for something that happened on lap 57 that technically didn't exist, but it did exist. So it was a fucking joke. So as a result of that, and whether you like it or not, that's what's happening, it's my series. These Crawl Room scores and the way I'm going to be doing the drivers are based on the results of lap 55. So the driver of Kevin Magnussen crashed, and then we had the red flag. So the results of the red flag and not the chaos and bullshit that happened after it, I'm not declaring that part of the race because that was fucking bollocks. People need to get a grip on reality. Everyone moaned about Monza last year when it finished behind the safety car because Daniel Ricciardo broke down, and it shouldn't end behind the safety car. It's not fair. It's a sport before it's a reality fucking TV programme. And I'm afraid that the Drive to Survive fans, Liberty Media, everyone is fucking pandering to these idiots that have joined Formula One in the last couple of years that haven't got a fucking clue how the sport works, and it's not classed as a good or exciting or entertaining race without some form of controversy and a big crash. And it does my fucking tits in. So if you're one of those people, you're quite happy, you know where the unsubscribe button is, and you know how to block a YouTube channel. If not, I'll give you descriptions afterwards in the comments below, because I can't be dealing with it. This is really ruining Formula One's reputation now. There was multitudes of ways that that result could have ended, and we picked the worst one. You know, we didn't need a 2-lap fucking dash at the end of the race, because it meant that the first 56 laps were just qualifying to get in the position for a 2-lap dash where you knew it were going to be carnage and chaos, and it just was. It's just not acceptable. And yeah, people are blaming the drivers and saying, well, it's up to them to know how to drive a car and not crash. Totally agree with you. But if you've had a shit race up until that point and you think, hang on a minute, I can nab a cheeky point here, you're going to go wild, aren't you? If you've already had a good race and you want to conserve your position, you're going to be more cautious at the start, and it's just leading to a recipe for disaster. And it happened. FIA got what they wanted. They got some drama, excitement, some exposure, be it good or bad. They got what they wanted this weekend. They got the bullshit, the drama, the excitement, and all the fake fans were going, oh, what a dramatic ending to a race. Oh, isn't that delicious? Oh, fuck off, delicious. Fuck off. I can't be dealing with it. I cannot be dealing with my fucking timeline on Twitter filled with people going, well, that was certainly chaotic. What a great ending. Great ending. Great ending that Alpine lost 16 points, both cars in the wall, over €1 million worth of damage to each car. Do we really call that exciting? Yeah, I know Gasly took Ocon out, and it was, you know, but it was all the fuck up that happened as a result of restarting that race the way they did. Absolute bullshit. So yeah, I'm not happy, as you can tell, and I've spent far too long on this fucking intro than I normally do, so we'll whip through the drivers as quickly as possible. But yes, the results of these drivers and how I'm going to score them and how I'm reading them out are based on lap 55. Like it or lump it, that's what's happening. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes on offer for some drivers that do something extra special during a race, and on the very rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. Let's take a look at the current Crawl Room standings then going into this race. It's on the screen now for you. Take a look and see where your favourite driver is on the leaderboard at the moment. It's still early days, but there's a pecking order already appearing. And I think after this race especially, there's going to be high praise for some drivers and a lot of criticism against others, so strap yourself in for that. So we're going to kick things off with the race winner, of course, Max Verstappen. And yes, he certainly is wearing a fucking strap-on or being bummed by one, isn't he, at the minute? My God, what a moaning bastard at the moment he's been. Again, we get moaning on the radio. Hey, forced me wide, Hamilton forced me wide at turn 3. It's called racing, Max. You've had 2 easy races this season. You had a bad start, Russell got past you, and Hamilton took advantage. Stop fucking whinging. Alright, stop whinging. Eventually he got back into the lead of the race again, just because he can, because it's a Red Bull, it's Max Verstappen, that's how it happens. And he got a comfortable lead of over 10 seconds, and he went wide on the second to last corner, which cost him 4 seconds. Now imagine if he'd have spun there. It was a high drama, wasn't it? He just looked at the fronts up, under braking at the second to last corner, went off on the grass, made a mistake. It was unbelievable to see. You know, overall for this weekend, Max had a solid race, didn't he? No matter what the FIA threw at him in terms of trying to make him not win, and this is my ultimatum, and this is why I've decided that the FIA tried to fix the race. Max had 2 bad starts on the first start and on the first red flag restart. Didn't get off the line well. They were thinking there was an easy opportunity there to not let a Red Bull win, and if Hamilton won, oh, how glorious would that be? Is my honest opinion on that. I think the FIA tried to match fix it somewhat to make sure that Max didn't win, and it didn't happen like that, and then they had to blame Carlos Sainz for the chaos that ensued. Not acceptable. But nonetheless, for Max Verstappen this weekend, it's going to be 8 points on the crawl room to him. I'm knocking him a point off for making the mistake at the penultimate corner, when he really didn't need to push hard, did he? More than 10 seconds ahead of the next car and lost a chunk of time for no reason. Almost cost himself the race there. Closer than you think to spinning when you're on the grass. I'm also knocking a point off for moaning, because I've got to, because there was no need to moan at Hamilton. It was racing, it was all fair. Hamilton deserved the position. You braked early, Hamilton braked late. Yeah, he forced you, he squeezed you. That's racing. Get over it, Max. You weren't leading for the entire race and having it easy, were you? So, unfortunately for Max, it's 8 points on the crawl room to him. By far, you know, not a bad weekend by any stretch of the imagination. A solid pole position. A great race overall. And again, if he keeps up this moaning, I'm going to start knocking more and more points off each time. I think I knocked half a point off last time, so it's a point this time. It's going to be 2 points next time if he keeps moaning. So yeah, 8 points to Max Verstappen. Next up is Lewis Hamilton securing second place in the race, and wow, oh wow, what a weekend for Mercedes. It was nice to see him back, wasn't it? He qualified third place behind his teammate George Russell and ran second in the early stages of the race. His teammate got ahead of Max, so did he. And he drove really, really well. Defended against Max for a little while, but obviously at the end, in the end of the day, Max was always going to get past him, and past him he did. As mentioned, he built up around a 12-second gap over Hamilton, but Hamilton was keeping Alonso at bay, wasn't it? Alonso was like doing this tyre saving preservation mode for a little while, then closing up, getting within the DRS of Hamilton, trying to force a mistake out of him. But Lewis kept his cool and drove fantastically well this weekend. It'd have been nice to see him win the race had he won it, but that's not how it happened. In the end, he was a solid second throughout all of the race, and he drove fantastically well. He drove a great race. Really, really well done to Lewis Hamilton this weekend. And for me personally, it's nice to see him have his mojo back, because Saudi was a miss weekend, wasn't it? It's fair to say he did incredibly average at Saudi Arabia. And yeah, this weekend overall, it looks like the team have found something. The car clearly suits that type of circuit, and Hamilton had certainly found his race pace once again. Yes, you could say he was behind George, and whatever happened there was unfortunate for George. And yeah, he were in some respects, but Hamilton still drove really well, and I think Hamilton is fully deserving of 10 points this weekend. It's a perfect 10 for Lewis Hamilton. Really nice to see him back. Really nice to see him smile. They're having a laugh and joke, him and Fernando, at the end of the race, weren't there? Great respect between each other now as they're maturing in their old age. They've got over the teenage years of not liking each other at McLaren, and now they're in different teams and seemingly best of friends. It's lovely to see. So yeah, a full 10 points to Lewis Hamilton this weekend. Can't fault a thing. Well done, Lewis Hamilton. Next up, it's Fernando Alonso, finishing in third place for the third time this season. 3 threes from 3 races. Fantastic, all the threes. He deserved it. let's be honest, he drove a fantastic race weekend once again, running around in 4th place after qualifying 4th. He had a difficult start though, didn't he? Lost a couple of places to start off with, picked his way back through again though, of course. And, you know, he deserved 3rd. He did deserve 3rd. It looked like he was out, didn't he, on that restart period that we're not really talking about, but that was the first driver to really hit high drama there. And he was lucky that the results got reversed back. But like I said, we're classifying everything based on lap 55, so we're not talking about that too much. But yeah, lucky boy there. And in respects to Fernando Alonso this weekend, he drove great, didn't he? It was solid all weekend long. He's doing a brilliant job in that Aston Martin, isn't it? Really, really delivering. So yeah, for Fernando Alonso, it's going to be 9 points on the crawl room to him. Don't think he had as good a weekend as Lewis. You know, tried to put Lewis under pressure, but he didn't crumble. And yeah, you know, dropping a few places back at the start of that first period, you know, setting back a little bit on his quest for hunting down the McLarens, but overall a solid weekend. So yeah, 9 points to Fernando Alonso. Then here we come to the first driver where the results are really affected, obviously, because I'm counting lap 55 as the race results, and that is Carlos Sainz. Smooth operator, smooth operator. Great race by Carlos, great race this weekend. Yes, he finished outside the points in real life, but here for me he's classified in 4th because he drove fantastically well. He thoroughly deserved finishing inside the top 4 for definite. You know, it was such a shame that everything had to happen the way it did at the end there. He is missing out on some major points after driving really, really well. He out-qualified his teammate in qualifying. He just looked a lot better overall and more comfortable in the car than Charles. And in the race, driving really well inside the top 5. Made the pit stop under the safety car that came out. For Alex Albon going off the track, of course, decided to make the early stop, and then they red flagged it. So the safety car became a red flag, or a yellow flag became a red flag. And nonetheless, electing to pit didn't work out at all, and he tumbled his way down to around 11th or 12th come the restart. Obviously, all the cars ahead of him had free reign of pit stops. You know, they effectively had a free pit stop, could change tyres. He was left home and dry and unfortunately outside the points. Come the start of the race again though, come the race restart, he had a great race and drove and clawed his way all the way back up to P4 in the race and drove incredibly well. As mentioned, we're not counting the last couple of laps, so for me he finishes in 4th place. And after the setback he had for no fault of his own with that red flag incident where he lost out, he had a pit stop under racing conditions, the other drivers ahead of him didn't. He drove crackingly to carve his way back through the field and secure 4th place on my crawl room. So for me, it's a 9 points to Carlos Sainz, 9 points to him. He drove really, really well, thoroughly deserved the result he got this weekend by me on the crawl room. And yeah, those last couple of laps that existed but didn't exist, threw it all away for him, and I don't blame him for going for it. So yeah, 9 points to Carlos Sainz. Then we come to Pierre Gasly. Oh, for fuck's sake, this is where he deserved to finish. 100% wholeheartedly deserved it. Pierre Gasly finishing in 5th place in that Alpine. An incredible result was there for the taking. He pretty much secured it, and then the FIA fucked it all up for him, didn't he? Pierre Gasly for me was one of the drivers of the day, absolutely. He drove so well, so smartly, kept cars within touching distance. You know, he kept Carlos Sainz within distance after he overtook him, carving his way through. It was in a nice, comfortable position. It was a brilliant, brilliant drive by him. He managed the tyres well. He was doing fantastic. Pierre Gasly, for me, my heart bleeds as the result that the FIA have given. But for me, it's a perfect 10 on the crawl room because he thoroughly deserved it. And yes, you can mention the accident was his fault during that period after the race restart. He couldn't see Ocon. He couldn't see Ocon out of his mirrors. No way. And everyone's saying unsafe rejoin. How can you rejoin safely after going off on turn 1, coming back on at turn 2? There's no runoff area. It's all grass. Sometimes the car will just take itself back on the road, whether you wanted it to be at that point or not. So yeah, unsafe rejoin, taking out his teammate. It doesn't count for me, and I wouldn't have counted it anyway. So yeah, a perfect 10 for Pierre Gasly. He finished 5th place for me in this race, and he thoroughly deserved those points for Alpine, and Alpine deserved the points as well. Well done, Pierre Gasly. Drove really well this weekend, drove really cleverly, and yeah. It's a shame that my results don't count towards the actual Formula 1 results, but there you go. Perfect 10 for Pierre Gasly. Then we come to Lance Stroll finishing in P6, and what could I say for Lance's race overall? It was a little bit lonely, wasn't it? I mean, he's not doing brilliantly. I mean, the fact he finished 4th in the real world standings proves how fucking bullshit this race was, because he was not a 4th place car at any point during that race. He didn't deserve it. It's unbelievable. And then the fact that he went fucking off at the bit that I'm disallowing and tumbled his own way down after being in the podium position then at that stage, like, just shows that he hasn't got a fucking clue. It just does me head in, does Lance Stroll, and undeservingly is finished 4th place. Here he's in 6th. This is where he deserved to finish, picking up a few points, but he doesn't deserve to be anywhere near Alonso because he's not proven any pace to be near Alonso so far this season. I let him off for the first round because he was a little bit broken and I thought he actually had a good race. Here, it was mediocre Lance once again. So it's 6.5 to me for the cruel room for him because, yeah, he didn't have a great race. He picked up a few points. Yeah, he was lucky at the end. And that's all there is to say about it. But yeah, for me, him finishing 6th place, or he would have finished 6th place had it not been for the bullshit, wasn't a great result. 6.5. to Lance. Then we come to Checo! Sergio Perez securing 7th place in the end on my standings after carving his way from last place on the grid after making a fundamental error in qualifying. Now, what could I do for this race? I could sing his praises and award him Driver of the Day like certain people did, and the F1 community awarded him Driver of the Day. But in the end, he made that mistake on his own, didn't he? And yeah, he was complaining of front locking, and he had problems in free practice 3 with front locking and running wide, and you just thought, let me just get a banker lap in and I don't really need to worry about the rest of it because I'll still get through into Q2. I can build up a bit of confidence, do a couple of laps there. But no, he went gunning for it at the start and cost himself big time. So yeah, while I am going to award Sergio Perez a reasonable score, I'm certainly not going to be awarding high scores that everyone's expecting. So for me, Checo Perez, and I think this is probably generous by a point, it's 7.5 on the cruel room to him, because overall I have to dock him some points off for costing himself a chance of this championship. That was an easy front row start, slipped away. You know, fair enough if you're not comfortable in a car, but in a car that you've got the pace, even if you're not giving it 100%, you should be getting into Q3 and at least lining up on the second row of the grid, picking up the race and building up the confidence as the race goes on, and yeah, being on the podium. It goes without saying, but here he is in the end, not doing a great job. Finished, where did he finish in the actual standings? Was it 5th? So yeah, picked up another couple of points there, and oh well. But yeah, for me, 7.5 on the cruel room. In 8th place, it is Lando Norris. What a phenomenal drive by Lando this weekend. Almost as good as Pierre Gasly. He drove really cleverly, really smart, didn't he? Got into Q2, qualified P13, made a great start to get into the fringes of the points. He was running around in 10th for a long, long time, wasn't he? And then the strategy that they had, he had a free pit stop, didn't he? He didn't pit under the yellow flags, and when it became a red flag for Albon, he got a free choice of tyres. That elevated him up a couple more places, if I remember. And in the end, I think he was doing really well in 9th, and then overtook Hülkenberg in the latter stages, using Perez to really, really smart advantage, I must say. He drove really cleverly there. So Perez came up, closing up behind him, full position. It didn't make life too difficult. He let him through within around a lap or two, didn't he? Just like, yeah, just come through, I'm not interested. Hülkenberg then started putting up defence ahead, cost both drivers time. Lando got back within the DRS zone of course, Perez and then Hülkenberg. Perez nipped through on Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg was vulnerable on worn tyres, really struggling more than the McLaren was with its tyres, and he nipped through. It was a great move, great overtake. Took a couple of laps to get through, but it did do it. And yeah, 8th place overall for Lando Norris is thoroughly deserving of a great score by me, and I'm going to give him 9.5 on the cruel room. He drove really well, didn't he? He drove really, really well, and it's nice to see the old Lando back after a difficult start this season. No fault of his own, really. I gave him a Palmer in Saudi because it was a little bit lacklustre, wasn't it? But I could understand why. He got himself compromised at the start of the race due to no fault of his own there at Saudi. But, you know, here he is. A solid qualifying for the car that's a bit shit over one lap. The race pace was looking promising, looking decent, and did a great move on Hülkenberg and kept at it, kept chomping at the bit. Hülkenberg was getting a little bit naughty, wasn't he? Moving under braking just ever so slightly to unnerve Lando to not send it up the inside at corners. But he got through. He thoroughly deserved P8, and it's 9.5 on the cruel room to Lando. Next up it is, of course, Nico Hülkenberg, and what a race weekend he had this weekend. He is the only driver, well, there's another driver as well when I will come to him, but he is one of the few drivers that I'm happy benefited by the shenanigans that happened ahead, shall we say, because he did deserve some really good points this weekend. He had the measure of his teammate all race weekend long. He looked so comfortable in the car, and I think it's the first time this season that we've seen the true Hülkenberg coming back, you know, the super sub as we know him from previous seasons, coming in and deputising for a race or two due to COVID and doing cracking jobs there. This was one of those weekends, you know, if you could say Hülkenberg back for a race and that was a super sub performance, absolutely. Drove really well, qualifying was solid, he was putting in some great laps there, wasn't he? Got himself into Q3. Did he slip down the order a little bit at the start? I think he did, but nonetheless he came back through, ended up gaining a few free positions as a result of the first red flag situation with Albon going off, of course, and gaining from Albon's demise as well. And then he just drove cleverly and was running 8th. As mentioned, came under a little bit of pressure from Checo, fended him off, and that cost him time to Lando, and then Lando slipped through on the better tyres. His tyres not eating up as much as what the Haas does. We know the Haas is heavy on its tyres and always has been. But, you know, if Hülkenberg was to cross the line in 9th place, this is the result I would give. And for Nico Hülkenberg, it has to be 9 points. It does, doesn't it? He drove really well. I'm just knocking him a point off just for offering a little bit too much defence for Perez. That's all I'm going to say. Yes, I know every point and position is crucial. Absolutely understand that 100%. But when you know it's a car that's inevitably going to get past, focus on keeping the distance to the car behind. You know, by all means, don't allow Sergio Perez to just pass you. You have got to put up a little bit of a defence, but I think he was a bit too overzealous, and that's what compromised him to Lando. Could Lando have still caught him anyway and got within the DRS and overtook him? Possibly. But he did lose a couple of seconds that he didn't need to lose, fighting a car that he was always going to lose. But nonetheless, a fantastic drive for Nico Hülkenberg, and it is 9 points on the cruel room to him. Last of the points finishers is Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Of course, in real life, he walked away with nil points and nothing, but here he is securing one solitary point for the Alpine team. He didn't have a great qualifying, did he? He was out-qualified by his teammate Gasly, but in the race was doing a solid job, was keeping his teammate honest, and unfortunately for him, he elected to pit under the Albon scenario where we thought it was going to be a safety car, and not turning into a red flag, and lost a lot of positions. I believe it was a slow stop as well for him, because I remember Ted Kravitz being like, oh no, and it's a slow stop as well, and I think that ended up costing him a couple of places, even as a result of other cars overtaking him in the pit lane that elected to pit as well. So he was down to around 15th, 16th, wasn't he? So to come through in the Alpine, that's not the easiest car, you know, struggles in the mid-pack for the most part, you know, certainly a lot more harder to overtake in an Alpine than it was for Sainz to recover, for Perez to recover the situation, of course. So yeah, Esteban Ocon for me is thoroughly deserving of finishing in 10th place and picking up a point. He recovered his bad qualifying performance almost instantly during the race itself. Elected to split the strategies, one not pitting and one pitting. He was the pitter, unfortunately, that didn't work out, and recovered to pick up a point. Is deserving of 8 points for me. 8 points for Esteban Ocon. I have to knock him a couple of points off for that poor qualifying effort, but nonetheless the strategy mainly compromised him and he recovered well to secure a point, in my mind anyway. So yeah, it's 8 points to Ocon. Just outside the points and finishing in 11th place on my standings, it's Oscar Pastry. Here he is. What's your favourite pastry? Mine's flaky pastry. I love a flaky pastry, me. Or a choux pastry with chocolate. Ooh, chocolate eclair, choux pastry. Or just regular, you know, soft crust pastry on a pie. Ooh, delicious, going for something savoury. So yeah, let me know your favourite flavour down below. What's your favourite pastry? So here he is on my standings, finishing just outside the points, but of course in real life he's scored his maiden points in Formula 1 and his home Grand Prix. I'm a little bit happy for him for that, I am not going to lie. As much as I was disappointed overall of how the race panned out at the end there, Little bit of a smile there for Oscar Pastry. But here he is, of course, in my standings, finishing P11, and he drove okay, didn't he? He had a really good race, some good battles. He had a good overtake on Zhou Guanyu, had a good overtake on Yuki Tsunoda. He was doing a good job, wasn't he? The car certainly had the pace overall to, race well. Again, qualifying wasn't great, didn't get out of Q1, but the car is struggling really over one pace, and it's difficult for him to recover, but recovery he did do, and it'd have been unfortunate to see him finish the race in 11th as he did on my standings, but that's life. You can't score points everywhere you go. The McLaren, though, it was a good car. It was deserving of around that 8th to 12th area, and that's where both drivers finished. So I think Pastry did a good job. It's his first time back at Melbourne, of course, as well. The last time he raced his home Grand Prix, so to speak, was when he was age 7 in go-karts. So yeah, it shows you how beneficial it is that the F2 and F3 championships are now going to Australia, because you don't get to race Melbourne unless it's on the F1 calendar. So yeah, it's a tough circuit to learn for the rookies. It's high speed, there's fast corners, it's flowing, and it does take you a while to get a little bit acclimatised to it, but acclimatised he did, and he did a solid job, did Pastry. So for me, it is 8 points on the cruel room to him. In 12th place, and another driver I'm happy did secure points in real life, it is Zhou Guanyu, of course. Congratulations, Zhou. He drove well this weekend, once again in an Alfa Romeo that looks like it's solid for the 12th to 15th area. Somewhere around there is where the pace of that Alfa Romeo is, just on the cusp of points. If they get the strategy right and the driver has a perfect in and out lap, maybe they could scrape a point in a real life situation and scenario. But as it was, he finished 12th place in my standings, and in the race overall he did end up securing a couple of points, and I'm really happy for Zhou for that, because he did drive well. He did drive really well. He deserved it. You know, he'd made a good move on Tsunoda, and it was just a good drive. I can't describe how good it was. It put Bottas to shame, you know. Qualifying okay, out in Q1, but out-qualified his teammate. In the race, made some great progress. And I was saying in the early part of the season how his first laps tend to be where he's a bit too overcautious and he costs himself places. Well, this time, once again, made ground and then stayed in that sort of area, battling on the fringes of points with an Alfa Romeo that doesn't really deserve to be on the fringes of points. And unfortunately, you know, you had the likes of Perez coming through, Sainz coming back through after his pit stop strategy, how it went wrong, and did lose out to Pastry as well. But yeah, overall, for me, Zhou Guanyu is fully deserving of 9 points on the cruel room for finishing 12th, and in the overall race and the standings that will count in the real life, even though it's fucking bollocks, he did pick up a couple of points, and I did have a smile on my face. I had a little smile for Oscar, but I did have a big smile on my face for Zhou Guanyu, because I think these points have been on the cards this season, and he deserved them. He really did deserve them. He deserved them towards the end of last year as well, but was rarely picking them up because the car kept breaking down on him. And I think these first 3 races have really shown that he is acclimatised to F1 now, and it's great to see, because I was always believing in Zhou, always. And I always said, just give him time. And time we've given, and he's doing really well now. In only his second season in a difficult car, he's showing Bottas up. And that's 2 races in a row he's done that. And now we let Bottas off for Saudi, but get ready, because I'm not letting him off this time. But yeah, for Zhou Guanyu, 9 points on the cruel room. Finishing in an unlucky 13th on this standings, it is Yuki Tsunoda. And what could be said for his race weekend overall? It was unfortunate, wasn't it? But I did once again have a little smile on my face to know that he has secured AlphaTauri's first points in real life. I certainly do, because he did deserve it. He drove really well this weekend once again. Great to see him into Q2. Great to see him, you know, get in the mid-pack of that. Was he 13th, 14th, somewhere around there? No, he was he even 12th? I think he was 12th, you know. He did a solid job in that qualifying effort. He was ahead of Piastri, he was ahead of his teammate, and he was ahead of Magnussen. So yeah, it would have been 12th, wouldn't it? Well done to Yuki for that. And in the race, he was driving around inside the points all race long until around the halfway stage, where he had an issue with the car. The team have said it was a battery issue, so it wasn't fully deploying the battery, so they were just like, just keep going. But he was down on power, so particularly at the 3rd and 4th DRS zones, on the back straight now as it is, because they've taken that chicane section out, through that bit and then through the fast chicane and then towards the 4th to last corner that's been remodified as well. It was a bit of a sitting duck there with not full deployment of power there, and the likes of Pastry, Zhou, Lando, Sainz, Perez, they all got past him with relative ease, and instead of being in that 9th area that he was for the most part, he did slip away, and on my standings finished in 13th place. But he drove really, really well this weekend once again, and this is 3 solid race weekends in a row for Tsunoda. It really is. He's driven well. It's nice to see him. I mean, did he deserve this chance? You know, 3rd season in Formula 1, it'd been a shunter for the first 2 seasons. I didn't think he deserved this chance, but so far with a difficult car, he's put some good performances in, and this was another great performance. So yeah, for me, Yuki Tsunoda, fully deserving of 8 points on the cruel room to him, and that's probably harsh by a point as well, to be fair, for the 13th place result. I know where he finished in real life, and I am thrilled for him for that, but yeah, we count in 13th, and with the problem he had to still finish ahead of the cars he did, thoroughly deserving. So yeah, for Yuki Tsunoda, 8 points on the cruel room. A great solid season so far. He's doing well. I hope he can keep this up, because I'm more than happy to be proved wrong, or I'm more than happy to be proved right when I said he was going to be good, but I just didn't think he'd take this long. But yeah, 8 points. Tsunoda. In 14th place it is, of course, Valtteri Bottas.
Remember that time I scored points in Japan even though I didn't know my way around the circuit? Me too. Fun times, eh?
Oh, Valtteri. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus Christ. What was that this weekend, Valtteri? You qualified last. Well, apart from Perez, obviously, but you were 19th. Oh, and then in the race you just did nothing at all, pal. Nothing at all. You were nowhere. You were just at the back all race. There was nothing from you. It was like Saudi all over again, but this time you didn't have damage. So where's Bottas gone this season? Because Bahrain was a great race by him to secure 8th place and pick up 4 crucial points. And then these last 2 races, he's just gone missing. And we did let him off, of course, at Saudi because of the damage, the floor damage that he did sustain. But this is like Saudi all over again without damage. So how bad was the damage actually at Saudi? Was that just an excuse because he's really struggling with the car all of a sudden? I don't know, but that was disappointing. Really, really disappointing. There was nothing there from him this week, and we didn't even see him. You know, there was no on board with him. He was doing nothing. He was just measling around towards the back or even at the back at some stages, doing absolutely nothing in the race. So yeah, big shame and a big disappointment, because he's done well in the past at Australia, not just in Alfa Romeo, but in Mercedes as well. So it looks like it's a circuit he goes well at. But this was just a nothing weekend once again, and Zhou really out-delivered him. So yeah, Valtteri Bottas, I'm afraid it's Latifi of the week for him. Next up is Logan Sargeant, and he just avoids a Latifi of the week because it was a nothing weekend once again by Logan, wasn't it? Still a rookie though, at a new circuit. So again, he's had no previous experience like Oscar and like Nick De Vries. No experience whatsoever around this circuit, so that's why I've allowed him to avoid a Latifi this time around, because, you know, it must be hard to learn in your first season, only 3 races into the season as well, to never do Australia before. Must be a difficult thing, so I've just slightly let him off. He has been good in the past though, you know, again we saw Bahrain, he did a really good job in Bahrain, you know, almost not getting lapped and finishing in P12. Saudi was a difficult one, but again understandable, a difficult circuit to learn, and here it is just again another difficult circuit. So yeah, for Logan Sargeant, it's nothing special of course, but it is just 3 points on the cruel room to him. And had we counted what happened after the results that I've declared on lap 55, had we gone what the FIA said and what the standings actually are, he would have been getting a Latifi for punting off Nick De Vries. So yeah, he wants to really consider himself lucky that I've gone back. But yeah, for myself, for Logan Sargeant, it's a 3-point weekend. Next up is Nick De Vries, of course, in the Alpha Tauri.
Me and and my best mate Joylian just went for a bite to eat at Timmy's. We didn't intend to use the drive-thru. We both missed our breaking points.
Oh, Nick. That was a disaster again, wasn't it? Again, a nothing weekend, and yet I've just given a bit of sympathy to Logan Sargent for the fact it's his first time at Australia. Had some good performances, though, in the first couple of races, so I've allowed it. Nick de Vries, seen nothing of him this season so far, and people said I was generous at Saudi, and I think I was. And this time around, I can't be generous anymore. That was a nothing weekend, once again. Again, you know, you could say, well, the tyre strategy, he started on the mediums, everyone else started on the hards, and that's true. And yes, he did pit under the yellow flags before it became a red flag, but he was at the back anyway. He made no progress on those medium tyres compared to everyone else around him on the hards. So, what can I do? What can I do? You know, he was on a faster compounded tyre and made no progress from the pack. Yeah, I don't know what I can do. It just has to be a Latifi, I'm afraid. It can't be anything else. I can't even talk about his race in a positive. I can't think of anything he did well, because it was just, again, like a Bottas, just obscure, obsolete, at the back, and seemingly not having any pace whatsoever. So, yeah, a Latifi of the week to Nick de Vries, and it was unfortunate to get taken out in that section of the race that I'm not meant to be talking about, but I still keep referring to. But again, it wasn't as if he's in a points-paying position or even had chance of points, was it? He was at the back, he had a sluggish start, and Logan took him out. Summed up his race, really, though, didn't it, to be fair? So, yeah, Nick de Vries, a Latifi of the week for a disappointing start this season overall. And this race was a disappointing one as well. And then we come to the first retirement on this list. It is, of course, Kevin Magnussen.
You know, it's still nice to be called the GOAT of F1. Remember Hungary, where I spent most of the race in P3 and finished ahead of George? Where's my Mercedes seat, Toto?
Yep, you got that right. It's a Latifi of the week to Kevin Magnussen, and we've seen him struggle in Australia before, haven't we? His first time at Haas back in 2017. He just did jack shit, was at the back and didn't do well, and his teammate really out-delivered him. And this season, it's been the same. You know, Hulkenberg was much more comfortable in the car all weekend. Magnussen, down in 14th in qualifying, was around that position throughout the race, and then he was 12th when he crashed. You know, it wasn't great, was it? And it was such a lazy accident as well. Maybe the sunlight just getting in his eyes a little bit there, potentially what happened as he went through turn 2, and that's why he ran a little bit wide, lost sight of the edge of the track. But everyone else got round it okay, didn't they? So that's a bit of an issue for me. Ripped his rear tyre off, ripped his rear wheel off, and did some damage to the suspension as well. So yeah, a shame to end his race the way he did. Had he finished in 12th and not taken himself out of contention, he'd have probably got about a 3 or a 4 from me. But then when he wipes himself out and does damage to the Haas, which is why they sign these drivers up to try and avoid that, it's a bit unforgivable, isn't it? So yeah, he was the one that set off all the chaos and carnage that happened afterwards, but that wasn't his fault. You know, at the end of the day, I'm sure he'd have still preferred to be in the race than be out of it and then watch the FIA fuck the world up. But yeah, for Kevin Magnussen, for me, out of the race, a silly accident towards the end of the race where he was only in 12th, there was no one ahead of him, no one behind him, it was in a lonely position, wasn't under threat, and just lazily caught the wall. Big shame. So yeah, Latifi of the week to Kevin Magnussen. Then we come to George of the Russell. Watch out for that ball of fire. Oh no, George. After what was a fantastic qualifying, lining up on the front row, starting P2, he nips up the inside of Verstappen at the start of the race. He leads the race comfortably. He was 2 seconds up the road and shalala went off the track, which we'll come to in a moment. And yeah, you know, what could be said there? He got caught behind the safety car. He had a great restart. He drove well. Then they elected to pit him under the yellow flag situation that then became a red. Tumbled down to 7th place as a result of that. Worked his way back up to 4th place and was catching Alonso, catching Hamilton, catching Verstappen. He was catching them. and then his engine expired. So yeah, a big shame for him. He drove so well this weekend. It was unfortunate, the red flag scenario, but I think he could have got himself back ahead of Lewis, to be fair there, because he just drove so well this weekend. Out-qualified his teammate once again. And for me personally, George, I can only score a retirement, a maximum of 5 points, as you know, and it has to be the maximum of 5 to George of the Russell this weekend, because he did drive so well. Qualified well, drove well, but unfortunately, the gods were not on his side this weekend. You know, the safety car that turned into a red flag was unfortunate, and then his engine expired anyway. So at least it didn't expire from the lead of the race, because it was going to go bang at some point, wasn't it? So yeah, big shame. Middle of the row 5, but the maximum I can award a retirement to George Russell. And then we come to Alex Albon. Oh no!
Hey, I've been invited to be a guest at Williams during the race weekends. Unfortunately, just a couple of rounds in, I've already set the hospitality unit on fire while trying to make a coffee.
Oh, Alex. I'm not angry. I'm just so disappointed. I cannot believe he threw it all away so early on in that race. How unfortunate. What a shame. He wasn't under any pressure as well. He just dropped it. Oh, after such a great qualifying performance, lining up P8 on the grid. Beating the likes of Gasly and Hülkenberg. Getting into Q3 for the second time only in his Williams career. And, you know, lining up in the best position he ever has. And then in the race, he was driving around in 6th place. And he just made the mistake at, turn 7, and just got the car wide and spat it into the wall, and lucky not to get collected by Hülkenberg as well, to be fair, as his car rejoined the track. It was a big shame to see. Big disappointment. Sad, because Williams could have gained a lot of points this weekend, but in the same breath, I'm kind of glad he went out this way, because he was around the Ocon, Gasly, Perez area that all got a bit fiery and a bit spinny, didn't it, at the restart, and a bit collision-y at the bullshit restart that did happen by the FIA. So I think had he been involved in that gaggle of shit, I don't think I'd have been able to compose myself. So yeah, in some respects, Alex, and this sounds really detrimental, I'm sure people are going to think I'm mad for it, I'm kind of glad he took himself out of the race, rather than seeing him do so well for 56 laps and then see that shower of shite unfold and find out Alex was in the middle of it and scoring no points, because that would have disappointed me a hell of a lot more, and I'd have been a hell of a lot more pissed off, I must say. But yeah, unfortunately for Alexander Albon, it has to be Latifi of the week. Did it need to be a red flag? I don't think it did. Did I understand why? Sort of, but every car went through that point anyway, and the gravel was almost clear by the time the 14 cars behind him went through. So yeah, for gravel, the car was in a dangerous place, I get it, but that's what you've got marshals for. But oh well. Not sure that red flag should have been a red flag, but I do understand it a little bit more than the Kevin Magnussen one, I must say. But overall, yeah, it's a Latifi of the week for Alex. I think that's the first one I've scored him ever on the Cruel Room, actually, because I don't think I had it in 2020 or 2021, did I? I don't think I had. I can't remember. But yeah, for Alex Albon, it's a Latifi of the week. And then last but by no means least, we come to Sha-la-la, oh, sha-la-la, sacre bleu, sha-la-la, oh, sha, oh, no, I mean, come on, guys. If you went back to round 3 last year, he was clear and fucked off into the distance of this championship, and we thought, yeah, he's got this wrapped up, and then it all went to shit, and this season's not even started for him, has he? He's now 10th in the standings, behind the likes of Hülkenberg and Norris. Like, work that out. In real life, that is, of course, in real life. Yeah, but, you know, 6 points all season long so far out of 3 races. An average of 2 points a race is just unbelievable, isn't it? What has happened? He got tagged by Stroll, didn't he, at the start? Racing incident for me. As much as I don't like Stroll, I don't think he was wholly to blame. It was just a look up the inside of lap 1 scenario. Just got tagged and spun round. Charles couldn't go anywhere. Stroll couldn't go anywhere. But once again, it's Charles Leclerc on the bitter end of it, on the wrong end of the stick again. and lost out hugely as a result. So yeah, for me, Shalala this weekend is going to get 4 points on the Cruel Room. As you know, a list of retirements, I can only score a maximum of 5-2. And he deserves a point knocking off for the poor qualifying effort in comparison to his teammate. But he was knocked out so soon in the race. We couldn't see how well he performed or how poor he compared to sites in comparisons. So for me, it is just going to be 4 points on the Cruel Room to Shalala. And there we have it then, guys. Those were the runners and riders of my order of how the race should have ended at Australia. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high, any too low? Do you agree with the way I've done it? Should I have done it this way? Should I have gone with the FIA's way? Or should I just made up my own way completely, entirely? Put cars where I fancied, where I think they deserved, because I think the FIA did that in the end anyway. As always, here are these scores then updated with my points. They're awarded on the screen now for you to take a look at. Have a look, see where the climbers and the fallers are. We've got one clear leader at the minute, but the gap is closing. We've got a few drivers at the bottom of the pecking order there that are going to be eager to work their way up. Alex has tumbled down there, De Vries at the bottom. Oh, the need of some good races coming soon now, don't they, unfortunately? Big shame for them. Nothing's happened this weekend for a lot of drivers, and a lot of Latifis of the week flying around as well. So, a massive thanks as always goes out to Dan of Mushy Gaming, formerly Mushy Gaming. He calls himself Dan B now, Danny B, Dan Bartlett. I can't bloody remember, but nonetheless, thanks as always go out to him. Massively appreciated, buddy, for the scoreboards, for the intros, for the outros, and for the driver icons you see as I discuss each driver. And of course, who can forget Dave, F1 Games PlayStation, for the Latifi of the Week skits that you all know and love, and for the voice of Nicholas Latifi. Thank you to Dominic Orlando for taking the time to record these, buddy, and send them over to me. Your help is greatly appreciated, becoming the resident Canadian of the channel. So, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you all at the end of the month for the Baku Grand Prix, and we could be seeing a fucking change to sprint races. As if we didn't want sprint races anyway, they could be changing the format of them. Oh my god. So yeah, I'm going to struggle to get through that race weekend as well, but I will do it just for you guys. And I think we're going to have to consider what we're doing in future with this series going forward. Of course, this season will end as it should end, but fuck me, I can't keep doing this shit all the time, especially if the FIA are going to get worse. So, might have to come up with a different format. Maybe just whinge about the FIA next year. Would that be something you want to see? Shall I just award FIA points based on their race weekend's performance? Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.